From Professor X to Jean Grey and Wolverine, the X-Men universe has some of the most diverse superhero representations we've ever seen in pop culture. I mean, the franchise has mutants hailing from all kinds of origins, and if that wasn't enough, well, they all seem to have their unique sets of powers that manifest and grow over the years. With all this in mind, fans have been more than spoiled for choice with X-Men content that sometimes focuses on a particular character or a specific team, or even a mix with storylines that have mutants weaving in and out of them. However, a few mutants have managed to get closer to our hearts than others, and today, well, we'll be discussing the top 25 X-Men characters. So, without further ado, let's dive right in. And if you want to make this fun, well, I challenge you to pause right now and make a mental note of all your favourite heroes before we see how many of them actually show up in this video. Wolverine, Logan. James Howlett, Logan, Wolverine. Different names, but all synonymous with the same unstoppable healing factor and razor-sharp adamantium claws. And I'm sure most of you have already guessed that Wolverine sits right at the top of this list. And, well, why wouldn't he be? While his story started with a troubled childhood with a neglectful mother and the Howlett estate's groundskeeper, Thomas Logan, who turned out to be his real father, Logan ultimately killed Thomas Logan after Thomas murdered John Howlett, the man James had believed was his father. With time, his mutant powers manifested as an incredibly powerful healing factor, and as he struggled to control his violent tendencies, years of trauma, Weapon X experimentation, and memory manipulation left him with severe amnesia. All of this worsened when he was subjected to the Canadian super soldier program Weapon X, during which his skeleton and natural bone claws were adamantium bonded. Over the years, he went on to become an integral part of the X-Men team, and even helped them on several missions before getting a few movies of his own under his belt, all while his regeneration powers, retractable bone claws and adamantium-coated skeleton made him one of the most sought-after heroes in X-Men history. Cyclops, Scott Summers. Cyclops, or Scott Summers, is one of those X-Men names who's taken the franchise to a whole new level. It's not just his mutant ability to project powerful concussive optic blasts that has made him one of the X-Men's most popular characters, but also his capabilities as a team leader who took the X-Men to great heights of success. His story began with tragedy when a Shi'ar attack forced Scott and his brother Alex to escape their family's plane by parachute while their parents were abducted. Scott later grew up in an orphanage secretly influenced by Mr. Sinister, before eventually becoming Professor Xavier's first X-Man, where he learned to master his mutant abilities. In no time, Xavier appointed him as the X-Men Task Force leader with the intention of maintaining peace with humans, and Cyclops' success in innumerable mutant missions made him one of the most compelling and revolutionary mutants in X-Men history. Some of his more notable achievements include heading the Xavier School, turning the X-Men into an extremist faction to ensure their survival during tough times, and even going to war against the Avengers during the Phoenix arc. The time he spent with Magneto shaped his ideals, and Xavier's training honed his empathy for all species and inspired the mutants to fight against darkness, all of which came together to help him realize his mission, protecting mutants and carrying on Xavier's legacy.
I was Phoenix.
Jean Grey, Phoenix. Jean Grey, or Phoenix, has often appeared as both a protagonist and an antagonist, and everything in between. And no matter what role that she might play, she continues to deliver some of the most compelling arcs in X-Men history. Jean debuted in the first issue of Uncanny X-Men in 1963 as Marvel Girl, and eventually hosted the universe's immensely powerful Phoenix Force. She was best known for her psychic capabilities, which involved, but were not limited to, telepathy and telekinesis, and these powers first showed up in the aftermath of a traumatic incident involving her best friend's death. This is when Professor Xavier stepped in with his telepathic expertise and mentoring capabilities, and accepted Jean as his newest student, giving her the codename Marvel Girl. Over time, she grew into being one of Xavier's most trusted students, and even his right hand, and her dedication towards the team was so strong that she even sacrificed herself during a space mission. This marked the beginning of her Phoenix saga. As the real Jean healed within a cocoon, the Phoenix Force created a duplicate carrying her memories and personality. After being manipulated by Mastermind and the Hellfire Club, that duplicate became the Dark Phoenix, and ultimately sacrificed itself after regaining control. But this was just one of the many storylines involving the Phoenix Force. Her journey from kind mutant to Scott Summers' love interest to the Phoenix, and ultimately to Dark Phoenix, is enough to place her among the top 3 X-Men ever. But this isn't even the most fascinating fact about her life. Add to this, Jean's history is filled with numerous deaths, apparent deaths, and resurrections, making her one of Marvel's most enduring X-Men characters, and her telepathic capabilities, strong-willed nature, and determination to help humanity to an extent where she sacrifices herself without a second thought are traits that make her so well loved and popular among fans. Professor X. Charles Xavier. Now, Professor X is quite literally the founding father of the X-Men, and he surely does not need any introduction as one of the most gifted mutants in the X-Men universe. While his greatest accomplishment lies in founding a school for mutants and eventually shaping them into the X-Men team as Professor X, Charles Xavier's story began years ago as a young man who traveled around the world with a dream of creating a world where humans and mutants coexist. He went on to make great friends and rivals alike, and after a conflict with Lucifer in the Himalayas left him unable to use his legs, he established Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters and dedicated himself to helping humans and mutants coexist. He was often known for staying in the shadows and orchestrating secret plans to bring his goals to life, but all of it was driven by benevolent intentions and concern for the mutants' safety. In fact, he was influenced by Moira McTaggart and his old friend turned rival Magneto to create a haven for mutants on the living island of Krakoa, where he went from the school founder to head of state. Unfortunately, the species war couldn't be contained, and Krakoa eventually collapsed, after which Xavier sacrificed himself and surrendered to prison. But this isolated incident does not diminish his long-standing reputation as a champion of peaceful coexistence between humans and mutants. On one side, he stood among Marvel's most powerful telepaths, trained some of the world's strongest psychic mutants, and devoted much of his life to mentoring generations of young mutants and helping them master their powers. Magneto. Also known as Max Eisenhardt, Magnus, or Magneto, he's been everything from an X-Men adversary to an ally, mentor, and even a member of the team. While he'd spent time at the Xavier Institute and was known as the perfect foil to the headmaster, Magneto earned his way to the top of many mutant ranking lists when he joined forces with Cyclops' X-Men to ensure the mutant race survived. He was never one to follow Xavier's pacifist ideology. However, he stepped up when the mutants needed him most and proved his worth by going to great lengths to protect the team. It's also worth mentioning that he has the badass ability to manipulate magnetic fields, allowing him to control metal with incredible precision and, on rare occasions, perform far more advanced feats. Magneto's story as a young boy who suffered at the hands of the Nazis shaped him into a compassionate yet rigid villain-turned-hero, and he played an integral part in establishing the mutant nation on Krakoa, and ultimately gave his life while defending the people of planet Araco during a brutal battle.
And to reclaim these relics of hatred!
Storm. Aurora Monroe. Storm, or Aurora Monroe, was revered as a goddess by the people she helped, not because she holds great power, but because nothing and no one can control her. Now, this description explains why she's ranked so highly on this list, but if I were to dig a little deeper, well, it's her fierce confidence paired with her resilience and skills that earned her this spot. After being orphaned at a young age, Storm spent her formative years as a common thief on the streets of Cairo before eventually reaching the Serengeti Plains, where she earned her reputation as a goddess. Now, her name itself reflects her ability to control and manipulate the weather, and she put these powers to good use by blessing the locals with rains to ease the droughts. She then caught Xavier's eye, who brought her into the X-Men, and she has not stopped growing since then. From stepping up as a leader to overcoming the loss of her mutant powers and later regaining them through extraordinary circumstances, Storm continued to grow into one of the X-Men's greatest leaders. Storm also went on to form her own X-Men sub-faction. She's also served alongside teams such as the Avengers, further cementing her reputation as one of Marvel's most respected superheroes. Nightcrawler. Nightcrawler, or Kurt Wagner, debuted in the X-Men's giant-size first issue. Over the years, we learned that this demonic appearing mutant was actually the secret child of Destiny and Mystique. Unfortunately for him, he was soon abandoned as a child in the Bavarian Alps, where the sorceress Margali Shardos found him and raised him as her own. Despite his frightening appearance, Kurt was a cheerful baby who often performed as a trapeze artist in a carnival. Alas, fate eventually caught up to him when a mob chased him and attempted to kill him. Thankfully, Professor X arrived at the scene and saved him from a brutal death. And since then, he joined the X-Men and adopted the identity of Nightcrawler. He became a valuable member of the team, thanks to his warm personality, in stark contrast to the cruelty of his first appearance. And besides being a gentle soul, he was a loyal, determined teammate who was willing to sacrifice himself on countless occasions for his team. Interestingly, Kurt has returned from death more than once through extraordinary supernatural circumstances, making resurrection an important part of his story, without it being a natural mutant ability. Gambit, Remy LeBeau. While many of us know Remy LeBeau as charming thief Gambit, very few are aware that his mutant abilities extend beyond theft. In fact, he has the power to charge inanimate objects with kinetic energy. And while this works well for tricking opponents during robberies, Gambit only went down this path after being raised by the Thieves Guild and eventually crossing paths with Mr. Sinister. His life took a new direction when he met an amnesiac, de-aged Storm, who eventually introduced him to the X-Men and gave him a chance to leave much of his troubled past behind. Naturally, his joining the team brought a lot of chaos, as his secretive, roguish nature didn't sit well with the rest of the team. Before long, he won them all over with his combat skills, soft spot for abandoned kids, and impressive stealth tactics. Some might even call him the most badass member of the team. He eventually married his longtime teammate and love, Rogue, and even became Apocalypse's Horseman of Death before returning to the X-Men. Over the years, he led the Thieves Guild and shared countless adventures with Rogue, while some alternate realities even depicted the pair rebuilding the X-Men and mentoring young mutants.
Sorry, sugar.
Rogue. Anna Marie, better known as Rogue, was raised by Mystique and Destiny and first appeared in Avengers Annual No. 10 in 1981, before later joining the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Now, one shouldn't assume her to be an evil mutant just because of her affiliation with the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, but rather learn from her growth journey as she went on to unlearn her mindset and joined Professor Xavier after an incident in which she permanently absorbed Carol Danvers' powers, memories, and part of her personality. Since her core powers lay in her ability to absorb others' energies and temporarily gain their powers, memories, and even a hint of their personalities, this Ms. Marvel absorption unexpectedly hit her harder than one could have imagined. The lasting psychological effects of that encounter eventually drove Rogue to seek Professor Xavier's help, ultimately leading her to join the X-Men. While the others were hesitant, his acceptance paid off when Rogue revealed herself to be one of their most loyal soldiers, who eventually even went on to join the Avengers Unity Division, marry her teammate and lover Gambit, and later shared many adventures with Gambit. In some alternate futures, the pair are depicted mentoring young mutants.
Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful involuntary friendship.
Beast. Hank McCoy. First introduced in the Uncanny X-Men's debut issue, Dr. Hank McCoy, or Beast, was one of the founding members of the team, and later joined the Avengers, the Defenders, and the X-Factor. Known for his enhanced physique, Beast has never shied away from the front lines of the X-Men's mission to coexist peacefully with humans and mutants, and he played a critical role in bringing Xavier's dreams to life. In addition to being a pacifist, he was a brilliant biologist, engineer, and scientist who often worked in the lab. Ironically, he himself struggled with his own appearance. Initially, Beast's mutation gave him oversized hands and feet, along with enhanced strength and agility. Over the years, a series of transformations gradually gave him the grey-blue, feline and ape-like appearances fans know today. During his time at the Brand Corporation, Beast developed a serum that transformed him into a grey-furred creature, later transformations eventually giving him his familiar blue appearance, but inside he remained a cheerful, loving personality. For many years, Beast was one of the X-Men's strongest advocates for peaceful coexistence between humans and mutants. Although his moral choices have become far more controversial in modern stories, his intelligence and scientific brilliance continue to make him one of the franchise's most fascinating characters. Colossus. Pyotr Rasputin. When Colossus, aka Pyotr Rasputin, began his journey on a Soviet collective farm in Siberia, his mutant powers eventually emerged, and Professor Xavier later recruited him to join the new X-Men. Then, Pyotr agreed to leave the farm and work alongside Xavier's new X-Men to rescue the original team from Krakoa, and it was then that Xavier gave him the name Colossus. As time passed, they emerged victorious in the fight, and Pyotr then went on to become a permanent member of the X-Men team, where he put his ability to transform into organic steel to good use. Combined with his incredible resilience and superhuman strength, it made him one of the X-Men's toughest members, and his commitment to protecting those around him, even after enduring many tragic losses, including his parents and brother. While most fans know him for his durability due to turning his body into steel, what makes him truly shine is his inner resilience as well, and his external mutation is a mere reflection of the strength, perseverance, and mental durability that he's retained even after dealing with repeated tragedies. He maintains a positive outlook, and even if he comes across as a brute force in battle, his private persona as a sensitive artist and his long, complicated relationship with Kitty Pryde made him a complex and relatable character. Iceman, Bobby Drake. Debuting in the first issue of the Uncanny X-Men, Iceman, or Bobby Drake, is often regarded as one of the X-Men's most powerful mutants. Ironically, his predatory reputation is also often overlooked or sidelined amidst bigger names. But this doesn't take away from all that he's capable of. With the ability to generate ice, manipulate temperature, and control environmental moisture, Iceman's potential is admittedly often unrealized, although he's proved his capabilities not only as a founding member of the X-Men, but also as a member of the Champions and X-Factor. His powers also include lowering his body temperature, thermodynamic control, molecular moisture manipulation, and among others, he's one of Marvel's Omega-level mutants, possessing immense cryokinetic potential. Unfortunately, he's been reduced to a background character who cracks jokes and makes ice slides. Over the years, various writers have continued to explore Bobby's immense potential through several solo stories and major X-Men storylines. Admittedly, his growth has also been stunted by his own lack of faith, but with time, Iceman has surely learned and grown beyond our wildest measures, and we can't wait to see more of his personal journey. Emma Frost. Emma Frost's telepathic abilities, paired with her evil tendencies as a member of the club's inner circle, made her a household name among X-Men fans in no time. As one of the X-Men's key adversaries, Emma repeatedly clashed with the team and famously tried to recruit Kitty Pryde to the Hellfire Club before later becoming one of the X-Men's greatest allies. However, the deaths of the Hellions marked the beginning of her long journey toward redemption. She eventually worked alongside the X-Men and co-led Generation X with Banshee. While she always had a passion for teaching, Emma finally used it to train young mutants, and even served as the co-head mistress at Xavier's school before eventually joining the X-Men and soon becoming a fan favorite. She later survived Cassandra Nova's Sentinel attack on Genosha and went on to become one of mutant kind's most respected leaders. With her exceptional telepathic abilities and a secondary mutation that allows her to transform into organic diamond, though at the cost of her telepathy, Emma Frost has had one of the most compelling character journeys in X-Men history. Kitty Pryde, Shadowcat, often known as Shadowcat, Sprite, and even the Red Queen. Kitty Pryde has had some of the most chaotic storylines in X-Men history. While she first saw signs of her powers manifesting when she started suffering extreme headaches, soon enough, these headaches revealed that this was just her mutant powers making themselves known. She could pass through solid matter and, in certain circumstances, even resist telepathic attacks while using her intangibility to defeat opponents and save innocent lives. This was around the time when Professor Xavier found her and invited her to join the X-Men, but Emma Frost also wanted to recruit her. Emma Frost was the White Queen of the Hellfire Club at the time. Both tried to recruit her to join their respective organizations. However, the X-Men prevailed, and it wasn't long before she became an instrumental member of the team. Although the Hellfire Club briefly abducted and manipulated her, Professor Xavier and the X-Men soon rescued her, and she continued fighting alongside the team, and she went on to have some interesting adventures with them, and became trapped in an intangible state afterward, became head mistress of the Jean Grey School, and later led the Krakoan-era Marauders, a rescue and trade team. What makes her stand out amongst the pool of the current X-Men is the fact that she stood the test of time, after having been an integral part of their old old inner circle, the New Mutants, and is also well respected among the newer wave of mutants. Cable. While mutants typically do not have a history of nepotism among them, some might argue that Cable may be an exception to the rule. Now, this is a little complex, since he's not technically the son of Jean Grey, and was rather born to her clone, Madeline Pryor and Cyclops, aka Scott Summers. While he first appeared in the Uncanny X-Men as a baby, he finally debuted as Cable in the New Mutants comics, where it was revealed that he possessed powerful telepathic and telekinetic abilities. His techno-organic condition also gave him unique interactions with advanced technology. As time passed, it was revealed that the circumstances of his birth were actually a long game plan orchestrated by Mr. Sinister in his attempt to defeat Apocalypse. A plan that ultimately contributed to Madeline Pryor's descent into madness, while baby Nathan was infected with the techno-organic virus. If this doesn't sound bad enough, he was sent to the post-apocalyptic future, where he spent quite some time as a time-traveling soldier before returning to the present, where he reunited with Scott Summers and Jean Grey long before the Krakoan era. He's one of those characters who serve as a bridge between the X-Men's past and future, and he famously reorganized the New Mutants into X-Force. While Cable has always been a popular character because of his parents' history, what truly makes him stand out is his determination to improve the future, not just mutants, but humanity too. In this endeavor, he even raised Hope Summers as his adoptive daughter, protecting and training her as the first mutant born after M-Day. Bishop. First appearing in Uncanny X-Men number 282, Lucas Bishop was born into a dystopian future. He traveled back in time while pursuing the escaped criminal Trevor Fitzroy, bringing him into the era of the X-Men he'd grown up admiring, fighting battles that he'd only read stories about. It's almost unreal to imagine someone reading stories about the future battles and then traveling to this past to be an active part of this history. But Bishop more than rose to the challenge, especially after having first-hand witnessed what happens to mutants in the future. However, after Hope Summers' birth, Bishop became convinced that she would bring about his dystopian future, leading him to pursue Hope and Cable across time. He eventually redeemed himself and later served as one of the great captains of Krakoa during the Krakoan era. He also possessed the ability to absorb and channel various forms of energy, such as sound and light, into both offensive and defensive techniques. On top of that, he had superhuman strength, stamina, and the ability to recover from injuries by channeling absorbed energy. Psylocke. Betsy Braddock, also known as Betsy Braddock, and now primarily known as Captain Britain. She first appeared in Captain Britain number 8 in 1976, before making an important early American appearance in New Mutants Annual number 2. While most fans love her X-Men version, very few know of her insane history as a secret agent who served in the Strike Psi Division, also sometimes moonlighting as her superhero brother Captain America. It was around this time that she had an unfortunate incident with Slaymaster, who left her blind. Thankfully, this turned out to be a life-changing moment when Mojo and Spiral captured and manipulated her, transforming her as part of Mojo's schemes and eventually leading her to discover the New Mutants. In no time, she joined the team as Psylocke went on unimaginable adventures, such as the time when he became entangled in Spiral's complex body-switching scheme involving Quanon and was eventually even killed by Vargas, only to be resurrected by her older brother Jamie. She then went on to work with several X-Men groups, including the Exiles, X-Force, and eventually became the prime champion of the Captain Britain Corps. On a more personal note, she also had many adventures with her multiversal guide and lover, Rachel Summers, and recently the two have been working closely in a new iteration of the X-Force. While this was a lot about her journey, Psylocke also has some pretty interesting skills as a psychic assassin. Yeah, you heard that right. She can unleash devastating psychic attacks, capable of incapacitating her opponents. Though she often strives to use her abilities responsibly, she's not hesitated to take lethal action when circumstances demanded it. Jubilee, best known for her ability to fire explosive energy blasts or fireworks. Jubilee had quite a sad childhood after she was orphaned and had to run away and make it on her own. At the start of her journey, she was a runaway who survived by shoplifting around a shopping mall and relied on her stealth skills to get by. Thankfully, it was this skill that changed her life soon enough, as she stealthily discovered the X-Men and even followed them through a teleporting portal to their base in Australia. Here, she kept herself hidden before making herself known at the right moment by winning them over after rescuing Wolverine from a deadly attack. This is what helped her earn her place in the X-Men, and she truly brought a whole lot of joy to the team while working alongside Generation X. While some have called her one of the most immature members of the team, she's eventually proved her worth as a valued team member. Her ability to generate explosive plasmoids resembling fireworks has saved the team's lives on more than one occasion. Angel, Archangel, Warren Worthington III. While Warren Worthington III remains an underrated mutant, he's perhaps one of the most intriguing characters in X-Men history. Millionaire playboy by day and gifted mutant by night, this character picks up many different mantles all in a day's work. As Angel, he used his natural feathered wings as one of the X-Men's founders. After Apocalypse transformed him into the Horseman, Death, he became Archangel, gaining metallic wings capable of launching neurotoxic blades. He began as Angel and worked with the X-Men. After suffering devastating injuries during the mutant massacre and losing his wings, Apocalypse transformed him into the Horseman, Death, replacing his wings with metallic ones laced with influence through poisonous neurotoxins, before brainwashing him until Warren eventually broke free. The story of Archangel is often viewed as a fallen and redeemed character arc inspired by religious imagery of a hero who fell from grace, joined the Horsemen of Apocalypse, and eventually rose again to the good side to help the mutant class and work with the X-Force. Mystique. While Mystique's origins are shrouded in mystery, her story has gradually unraveled, revealing her as a mutant terrorist who first worked with Irene Adler before reforming the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Also known as Raven Darkholme, Mystique's extremist views make her a standout in mutant history, and it also helps that she was a master deceiver, whose unconventional methods allowed her to infiltrate organizations such as Freedom Force, X-Factor, the Marauders, and eventually the X-Men. While she first worked alongside Irene, she went on to embrace her new persona as Mystique, while Irene assumed a new identity as Destiny. Later on, Destiny's death played a huge role in Mystique's storyline, and she was even labeled as a treacherous ally, a reputation that she had to work really hard to overcome. In later stories, Mystique devoted much of her efforts to resurrecting Destiny and protecting her family, including her foster daughter Rogue and her biological son Nightcrawler, playing a central role in Destiny's eventual resurrection during the Krakoan era. All this was possible because of her extraordinary shape-shifting abilities, which allow her to alter her appearance, voice, and physical features to impersonate others. She also possesses enhanced senses, slowed aging, and regenerative abilities that make her one of Marvel's greatest infiltrators. Polaris, Lorna Dane. While we often talk of Cable as the ultimate Nepo mutant kid, Lorna Dane, or Polaris, is another addition to this niche list. She was the daughter of none other than Magneto, and she inherited Magneto's magnetic abilities. Lorna also pursued her studies in geophysics, and she continued to return to the X-Men and X-Factor throughout her life. Unfortunately, her fate had already been written out for her, and she was soon sucked back into several mutant crises, or found herself caught in conflicts including several supervillains, including her father, Magneto. All of this eventually brought her back to the mutant community, and she went on to work with the X-Factor and continued developing her relationship with her father, including during the Krakoan era. Now, her story is also not this straightforward, and I must highlight that she's had her fair share of struggles. After being possessed by Malice and losing her mutant powers on M-Day, Lorna later received replacement magnetic abilities through Apocalypse's technology as the Horseman Pestilence, before eventually regaining her original mutant powers. You must think that Polaris had really seen it all, but no, this was not it. She was even captured by the Shi'ar, but thankfully she rose above it all, and with support from allies such as Havoc, has managed to survive as a part of the X-Men and the X-Factor for many, many years.
Adiós, pendejo.
X-23, Laura Kinney. If Wolverine wasn't enough of a showstopper, scientist Sarah Kinney used Wolverine's genetic material to create Laura Kinney, also known as X-23. While reconstructing a damaged DNA sample, Sarah secretly incorporated her own genetic material into the process, making Laura Wolverine's genetic daughter, rather than simply a clone. Trained from childhood to become a lethal weapon, Laura's early encounters with Wolverine were shaped by manipulation, and the facility's missions. After escaping the facility and embracing several hardships, including exploitation in New York, Laura eventually found her way to Wolverine and later enrolled at Xavier's school. She then embraced her reality and became an invaluable member of the X-Men community, where she served as a part of their training group, the X-Force, and even a student of the Avengers Academy. And a few other X-Men teams. X-23 possesses enhanced strength, speed, regeneration, 2 retractable claws in each hand and 1 in each foot, and she later adopted the Wolverine mantle after Logan's death, continuing to use it even after his return and became a part of the all-new X-Men. Sabretooth, also known as Victor Creed. Sabretooth first appeared in the Iron Fist comics in 1977. However, the version we're focusing on here is the heroic Age of Apocalypse incarnation of Sabretooth. If this wasn't enough, he also served as a surrogate father to Blink and repeatedly risked his life, and again his life, through the Age of Apocalypse, thereby establishing himself as one of the Age of Apocalypse X-Men's most respected members. He primarily appears in Wolverine and related storylines, possibly because he shares many traits with Logan himself. For instance, he naturally possesses razor-sharp claws and fangs, enhanced senses, a regenerative healing factor, superhuman physical abilities, and cunning instincts that make him one of Wolverine's greatest foils.
I will never be powerless again.
Apocalypse and Sabar Nur. I'm sure you must be wondering how Apocalypse can appear so low down on this list, but, well, some surprises are best kept for the last. Known as one of the oldest mutants, Apocalypse was the primary villain for the original X-Factor team, as well as many later renditions of the X-Men. Known for creating many different Horsemen of Apocalypse over the centuries. His shape-shifting abilities, paired with his immense power and longevity, reinforced his beliefs that he was the father of mutant kind. Also known as En-Sabar Nur, Apocalypse's name can be traced back to ancient Egypt and has commonly been interpreted in Marvel as the first one. It's often said that he was born in ancient Egypt thousands of years ago, and he was abandoned at birth because of his appearance. While he was abandoned at birth, he was taken in by a ruthless warrior, which is where he learned all about survival of the fittest and developed an opinion on mutant supremacy. With time, his beliefs only strengthened, and he eventually discovered and mastered advanced celestial technology, which greatly enhanced his already formidable mutant abilities. However, Apocalypse's philosophy of survival through strength eventually led him to respect worthy opponents, and in later stories he even worked alongside mutant kind during the Krakoan era. That being said, it wasn't an easy path for the X-Men to reason with Apocalypse, considering that he mastered celestial technology, transferred his consciousness into new bodies on several occasions, and continued to evolve over thousands of years.
Wreak havoc.
Havoc, Alex Summers. Now, you must be relieved that I've talked about Apocalypse. We come to the last mutant on this list, Alex Summers. Popularly known as Havoc, Alex has spent a majority of his life in the shadows of his elder brother Scott Summers, aka Cyclops. However, he's so much more than that, and has even proved himself by leading an Avengers squad and working alongside teams such as the X-Men and X-Factor. When it comes to abilities, he's classified as a powerful mutant by absorbing ambient cosmic energy and releasing it as powerful plasma blasts, explosions, and even plasma generation. While he struggles with controlling his powers here and there, he later led the Avengers Unity Squad against the Red Skull and the Apocalypse Twins, further cementing his place as one of my favourite underdogs on the team. And with that, we come to the end of our top 25 X-Men characters list, covering both the obvious choices and some of the more underrated mutants. But that's all from me. I'm curious to know how many of your top picks made it onto the list. Keeping my initial challenge in mind, be sure to share your guesses and hit rates in the comments below. And if I missed any of your favourites, well, don't worry, there's plenty more content like this coming soon.